Welcome in King Wales album review party. Today we have a very fun episode, very special episode for us, because we're reviewing one of our collective favorite artists,
hmm
and that is Gallant. We are reviewing Zinc by Gallant today. Before we get into a series, which I'll talk about later on at the end of this episode. But first of all, how are you doing today, Ty? How's life? How's everything been going?
Busy as always, but that just makes it all go by quickly, which
Amen.
is neither good or bad. It's just a thing.
It's just,
But
I like that.
but
Oh,
I'm happy to be here to talk about Gallant, an artist who often gets looked over in conversations, especially for R&B. I think he is so much better than he is given credit for, at the very least in like award conversations. So any opportunity to talk about Gallant, I'm there.
oh yes. Like if they ever do um, a Grammy category for most criminally underrated, Gallant will sweep every single year because he's definitely the most underrated R&B artist out there. Might be the
hmm
most underrated artist out of anybody,
hmm
because he definitely does not get the attention that he deserves for his incredible music. So,
Especially considering the people that he has worked with in
oh
previous
yeah,
albums. For
oh
him
yeah.
to work with name like heavy name power, to even have like nominations on his very first debut album, and to keep up with a lot of that
Mhm.
like that consistency with his quality, and to still just not even be talked about.
I was noticing, so Zinc, his latest album, it was released under um Mom and Pop Music was the label that it was released under, which I
Well,
thought was
that'll do it.
interesting because Ology was released under Warner Bros, which is
hmm
one of the biggest it's one of the big music companies, Warner Bros obviously is, and so was Sweet Insomnia in 2019. So I don't know if he left Warner Bros or if he was dropped by them or what happened there. Um, but again, that just kind of goes to that underrated that we were talking about.
hmm
He had this great album that was released on a big label. And I don't know if I guess they expected it to do better or something like that. Again, I don't know what happened there. I should have done some research on that, and maybe I'll get a chance to next time we talk about a project of his. But I'm trying to see, when was the last label? So Zebra was self-released, that was independent. So when he released Neptune, which came out in 2021, that was done under Empire, which is an
Okay.
independent record label. So
hmm
somewhere between Sweet Insomnia and Neptune, so 2019 and 2021,
hmm
Warner Bros. No longer represents Gallant. And maybe it was related to the pandemic. I don't honestly, I have no idea. But
Right.
again, criminally underrated, just like this album.
Yeah.
Now, I'm like, again, to me, if it was me, if I was Gallant's manager and like I knew like all the ideas in his head, I would have had him release Sweet Insomnia first, then Zinc, then Ology, because I don't think the
Mm.
world was ready for Ology in 2016. And I
Oh,
think
oh my God, no, absolutely not.
no, it was not. And I think because Ology came out and that was his first album, I'm not going to say it makes everything out there worse, because that's not how it works. You always want
Mhm.
to put your best product out there at any point in time. That's like, you don't want
Mhm.
to say like, "Oh, this song is too good for me to put it out right now. Let me just wait." That's not how music works, right? That's not how
Right.
anything works with movies or any kind of entertainment. Always put out, if you have something that's really good, put it out. Always put out your
Mhm.
best quality possible. Um,
Mhm.
but sometimes when you do that, like Ology is such a masterpiece that's hard to top and hard to master, that, everything's going to kind of be looked at through almost that's not the same lens, but it's a tough act to follow. That's all you could really say. It's a tough
Yes.
act to follow. I think Zinc gets a lot closer, and I don't want to, I'm not, when I say it gets closer to it, I don't want to hear Ology all over again. You know what I mean? Because like if I
Right.
want that, I'll just go listen to Ology.
Right.
uh, But I'll say that Zinc gets closer to kind of more the introspective, what we heard on Ology. Zinc is a little
Hmm.
bit closer to it than Sweet Insomnia was. There are still some great tracks on Sweet Insomnia, don't get me wrong, you know. And again, for any other R&B artist, Sweet Insomnia is fantastic. But
Hmm.
we're talking about Gallant here.
Right. Someone we hold to like a little bit of a higher measure
Right.
because he did come out swinging so hard.
hmm And that's the thing that kind of happens, you know, when you drop a project as powerful as Ology, you raise the bar yourself. So now you're kind of set at that bar.
Hmm.
So to me, I mean, Zinc was a very it felt very solid. I'm not sure if I
Hmm.
had any like standout tracks on it. I did like Sticks and Stones because I felt like that
Hmm.
was a kind of a sequel
A
to Bone
sequel
and
song.
Tissue.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like it was a sequel to Bone and Tissue from Ology. And I liked the way that one was. I like the way that one
Hmm.
kind of you know, like I said, it was a sequel, but it also wasn't trying, it didn't feel like it was trying to capture the magic of Ology. Like sometimes artists like they'll release something that does so well and then they'll do something else that tries to like capitalize or capture that. And this didn't really feel like that. This felt like Sticks and Stones was just the natural progression from Bone and Tissue. I really need to like
Hmm.
listen to them both back to back, and that would really like help sink in what he's trying to say there. I
Yeah.
also like Centigrade. I thought that was a good track on there. I really liked, and I liked the feature on it as well.
Yeah. Sticks and Stones stands out for me. Alongside, there's a really great three-track run that I love. Sticks and
Uh,
Stones to Siberia to Monorail. All three of those I put on like heavy rotation. I really enjoy. And
yeah.
then the second to last song, Cold Star, I also really enjoyed. I think for me, a big issue with Zinc, and it's nothing to Gallant's fault. It's just when we talked about ology, you and I had had years to like sit and reflect on the album and sit with
hmm
us so that we can think about it. Zinc has come out in a year that is so jammed packed with music that I am personally interested in listening to that I just have not had the time and effort to put into really listening to the lyrics and like the poetry of his storytelling to see if there's a deeper meaning that I just have not yet gotten that I enjoy from his music in the past, specifically Ology. And as of right now, it's hard for me to say where it sits because of that. My There was just something about Ology before that had just captured my attention immediately that is missing from Zinc. Like there's nothing here that makes me like, okay, I just have to drop what I'm doing and like do a like write a
Dive deep.
research paper. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's there's nothing in Zinc that has grabbed me to that extent. But that's not to say that it's not there. It's just it's too busy of a year for me to be able to do that. And so because of that, it sits lower for me.
And it does feel like a lot of artists are catching up. And you know, like when you think about like we still had a lot of music that was released even during the pandemic. But it's a little different because like people don't always think about how important touring is. Because when you're an artist and you make an album, most of the time you're borrowing that money from the label. The label's not just paying for it, you're borrowing that money from the label, and whatever you don't use, you live off of, and then you pay all that money back with the ticket sales from your tour. So a lot of artists either they didn't release an album during the pandemic because they're like, well, I can't tour to pay this thing off. Or if they did, they either released singles or did something in a way that they could kind of build up hype all the way until now 2022, 2023, 20 tours really started picking back up again, and now it feels like everybody's on tour because everybody's trying to make back the money that they spent during the pandemic trying to make an album. So I
Right.
see what you're saying, like if in case that's why so many albums are coming out this year, because these artists are trying to get back on tour. And the way you get back on
Hmm.
tour is you release new music because that attracts new people whenever you put it out there for the release radar.
Hmm.
Um, so I say a lot to say, and yeah, and guess who's going on tour, in just a couple of months? Gallant.
Gallant.
Unfortunately, he won't be coming anywhere near us unless we want to head out to California for a weekend. And who knows? Maybe we will. Um,
Hey,
but
hell,
yeah,
I'll
that's
go to Seattle,
exactly
Washington again.
go to Seattle. Oh yeah, January 30th. Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. So yeah, that's why Gallant has released all these songs. Not released all these songs, but that's why all these artists feel like they're releasing all these songs because they're trying to get some of that money back. They're trying to, they need to make a living. It's like us going back to work. The artists are going back to work,
Hmm.
for their different positions and jobs. Um, I will say, a couple of it's like I didn't really like Crimes of Compassion. So like on
Hmm.
Ology, like when I first heard it, I didn't get it. I'm not gonna lie. And
Hmm.
then I remember we talked about it a long time how like I didn't get Ology. I was like, I don't know, Ty, this album is kind of weird, kind of whack to me. And then
Hmm.
like as I grew up, I was like, what is Gallant top? Whoa. Because again, I was
Yeah.
18 when it came out, and then just in the 4 years, like, sometimes your biggest growth happens between like that teenager transitioning to adult once you
Hmm.
realize that, like, oh, hey, I gotta go like make money and pay for stuff now. It changes you.
Right.
It changes you.
Right.
Adult changes you.
Yeah.
And so then I'm like, oh my God, I understand ology. I understand what he's talking about.
Hmm.
And like from that moment, there wasn't a miss on that record. Like some songs were just fantastic, and other songs were more fantastic. Like there wasn't a
Hmm.
skip. And every time I
Hmm.
thought there was a skip, I'd go back and listen to it, and I'm like, oh, I can't skip this. Like I remember
Hmm.
I tried to add Gallant songs to like a playlist that I had of like R&B songs, and I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, let me get that one. Oh, I gotta have that one. I gotta have that. Oh, let me get that one. Before I knew, I added his entire album to
Yep.
the playlists. And it was
Hmm.
like the playlist of R&B music, Gallant, and then the rest of the playlist. It was like,
Right.
okay, at this point, just listen to the album. Like, what are you
Right.
doing? So, but for me, like, I feel like Crimes of Compassion that ended up being a skip for me. But I
Hmm.
really did like Inside Job. That was another song that I didn't mention earlier. Like when he says, I played God and I lost. And again, like I hate to say, like most of the things that I feel like I end up liking about Zinc are some of the things that feel like they are kind of playing off of the ideas from Ology. Like played
Hmm.
God and I lost kind of reminds me of Bourbon, because
Hmm.
I can't think of the chorus right now, but it kind of has that imagery about, playing God or not believe, like, kind of that faith shaking reality that he was kind of going through with Ology.
Hmm.
So I'm almost like I don't know if because this album doesn't necessarily feel like a sequel to Ology, and I don't think
Hmm.
that's what he was trying to create. But with some of the songs, they ended up being like you can tell the Sticks and Stones is a sequel to Bone and Tissue. So I don't know if this album would have been better if he really leaned in to that. This is a sequel to Ology without telling his fans that. You know what I mean? Just kind of
Hmm.
subtly making everything be like a sequel. Um, because I mean, those ended up being the songs that I resonated most with off of this album. So again, I don't know if that would have made the project stronger, I guess,
Hmm.
or made it, yeah, I guess stronger is the right term, or if it would have seemed like a desperate attempt to grab some nostalgia that may not be there anymore. So it's hard to
Right.
know for sure, but that is just what I noticed when I was listening to this album.
I will say too, there's a lot, there's less straight R&B tracks on this album. Like it feels like he's expanded his influence a little bit when comprising. There's almost a degree when I was listening to it of like inspiration from breakcore, which is like a subgenre of like electronic music that I really love. That's categorized by these like really fast like drum kicks
Mhm.
that I really love, and you can hear it on some songs like Monorail. It's not quite fast enough, but it doesn't feel like R&B than I am used to. And so like Zinc doesn't feel as much like an R&B album as it does just a alternative album to me because of it. And
Mhm.
I think maybe that may play into why it doesn't hit as hard in some areas because we've seen how strong he can be in that genre of more classical R&B or alternative R&B, that if he leans a little further outside of it, how much does that affect our enjoyment of it? Like there's moments where he does like I don't hear the same like vocal range on all of these tracks like we
Mm.
may have gotten before that really shows off his prowess. Not that anything is bad, it just doesn't feel as like, hey, pay attention.
And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head like with that. And again, it's one of those things. So like monorail, like when you talked about those fast drum kick breaks, it reminded me. It didn't remind me of it because I didn't like it as much. So like I heard that drum kick and I'm like, I don't really know. I don't like this as much. But then when I
Hmm.
remembered Ology and Perkajizik, I may have been mispronouncing that.
Hmm.
But he does a very similar thing where he has, the morphine, I catch you, and then he hits it with that drum break, and it
Right.
fits so well, and it works, and
Right.
it's so well executed in that song because you transition from like this laid back, slick R&B song to
Yes.
this drum break that kicks in, and it feels like it's giving you anxiety, and I feel like
Yeah.
that's the point of that song right there.
Like you go from like like a smoking lounge or something to
Right.
this like really intense like
And I feel like that's
moment.
the perfect way to illustrate what it's like to be on drugs. And I mean, the song is called Perkajizik. Like it's at least a perfect metaphor for like how you can be like calm and relaxed and then suddenly like going crazy from like all this anxiety or stuff. Or it's like all those anxious feelings make you want to get back to like that chill, relaxed feeling. It feels
Hmm.
like it works and it fits and it's very, very intentional and perfect. But I
Hmm.
wasn't getting that on monorail. Like honestly, when that drum break hit, it kind of took me out of the song. And it kind of took me like, I don't really know. I didn't understand why this is here right now at this point. And so again, it's kind of that thing that's like, is it a successor to Ology? Is it a spiritual successor to Ology? Would it have been better if it
Hmm.
was leaned into more? Or is it just his fans just need to separate his work from Ology and understand that he's not gonna recreate that
I think that's probably
I
going to
think
be
that's
the
probably
lesson.
it. Yeah.
I will say the Gallant is an artist that has instilled trust in his fans. At least to
Hmm.
me, like
Oh yeah.
he is an artist that I trust his music to where like if Zinc was released by anybody else, I don't think I'd be caring as much about it just from the
Indeed.
songs themselves. But
Yeah.
because Gallant made it and he is an artist that to me has proved that he is worth like digging deeper into like the poetry of his lyrics or the setup of some songs and the way that he lays out the progression, that to me I kind of have like bookmarked this album in my head of like once the chaos of 2024 like dies down and we get through like what's the best thing we've listened to, all of those kinds of lists, this will be something that I will get to go back to and further like deep dive to see if there is like something more valuable that I find, a
I
diamond
completely agree.
hidden within it.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. I mean, Gallant has my trust. I'm gonna continue listening to whatever he puts out every single time, because it's Gallant, and like
Mhm.
I trust his artistic ability, and he has an incredible voice. So I think you really hit
Yeah.
the nail on the head. If Zinc had been dropped by anybody else, probably wouldn't have, but because it's by Gallant, it's like okay, let me. It's like I trust him so much. If I'm not right getting it right now, let me give it some time and I'm going to come back to it and see if there's anything else I can glean from it. So like maybe we'll take another look at
Right.
Zinc a little bit later.
Yeah,
Maybe we'll do it like
this may need like a round two at some
yeah, this might
point
be a part
to
one.
like
Yeah, yeah,
although like we do say that thinking of it from the perspective of bringing in new listeners, I don't think Zinc does a good job at saying why you should listen to Gallant, at least off the bat. Like
yeah.
there's nothing that like is so immediately like pay attention and grabbing like that. that I think would be kind of necessary for new fans. Now, maybe it plays out differently live, and
Hmm.
going to see Gallant perform is like a totally transcendent experience. I wouldn't know, haven't seen him yet, would love to at some point.
I
But
think Gallant has kind of adopted that. Like, there's an idea that there's 1,000 true fans, that there's a
mhm,
thousand people out there that will tune into you no matter what and will support you and help your career if you give them what they want. And I think what you mean to like bring in new listeners, I think that's what Sweet Insomnia was supposed to be. That's why Warner
mhm,
Bros. Had him do a song with Black. That's why they had him do a song with Sabrina Claudio. Brought in some
mhm,
of these people because they're like, yo, we're okay. Ology was good and critically acclaimed and all that good stuff, but let's go ahead and do Sweet Insomnia to bring in some new R&B listeners. And
mhm,
maybe it didn't bring in as many, or maybe Gallant. I mean, I think he still feels good about that project, but it definitely feels like Sweet Insomnia was the one that was trying to attract new fans. And Zinc
mhm,
feels like a project he's doing for his existing fans because he realizes the
mhm,
same people that are listening to him because of Ology are not the same people that might be listening to him because of Sweet Insomnia. And to me, the fans that stick with you, like if you release a project like Ology, if someone becomes a fan of your music because you drop something like Ology, that's a fan for life. That is a true
mhm,
fan who's going to try to come to your show, who might fly across the country to come see you and support you. That's a fan that's going to trust you and come see your music no matter what. But to
mhm,
me, if you attract a new fan based off Sweet Insomnia, that feels like someone who's just looking for the next R&B song, is going to listen to it a couple of times and then maybe move on. Like it
mhm,
doesn't
mhm.
feel like someone who's like really interested in your artistry and you as a person. So
Yeah.
I say all that to say, I think I realized this album got cut off. It was released in September. I was like, even though like Zinc, like we still don't hold as in high regard as Ology, I still think
Mhm,
is one of the better R&B albums released this year. And I was kind of surprised that didn't get nominated for the Grammys, but it turns out
mhm.
that that cutoff was in August 31st, and this album came out
Right.
in September. So we're going to be starting a new series pretty soon called Grammy Snubs and Dubs, where we're going to be going through who we think should have won and who we think did win in each category. And this
Right.
definitely would have been my pick in the R&B section. But I guess technically I can't really use it because it didn't quite make the cutoff.
Not quite, but you know what? There's always there's always next year.
There's
There's
always next year. Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah. So
2025 Grammys.
of course.
He
So
would
yeah,
qualify
so
for that.
yeah, yeah. And we will be doing snubs and dubs for that year too. So make sure you let us know your thoughts about Zinc, about Gallant. If you have any thoughts about it, did you like this album? Did you not like it? And of course, stay tuned for our series, Grammy Snubs and Dubs. It's going to be coming out very soon. I'm going to bring on some guest people. It's going to be
Mhm.
awesome. So make sure you stay tuned for all of that.
You won't want to miss it.
No, you will not. Take care, guys. We will see you next time.